Here you can see the constructor of the main view model. It takes a func of iFriendDetailViewModel to create iFriendDetailViewModels, and it also takes a func of iMeetingDetailViewModel to create iMeetingDetailViewModels. But now let's think what happens when we have many different types of detail view models. Then this constructor will just grow and grow. It will get many parameters. One additional parameter for each additional view model type. To avoid this constructor pollution, we can use AutoFac's iIndexed interface. It allows you to resolve a type by name. So let's see how this works. I just remove these two func parameters and instead I introduce a new parameter of type iIndex. I press Ctrl- to add a using directive for AutoFac features indexed. I want to resolve my detail view models by name, so I pass in string as a key. The value should be an iDetailViewModel. Now I just call this parameter DetailViewModelCreator, and I store it in the field _DetailViewModelCreator. I press Ctrl- to generate that field. We can remove the other two lines for the FriendDetailViewModelCreator and the MeetingDetailViewModelCreator. I also remove the field for the MeetingDetailViewModelCreator and also the field for the FriendDetailViewModelCreator. Now let's go to the onOpenDetailView method where we create the detail view models. So here we have these lines of code and we switch by view model name. Now instead of doing this whole code block here, we can just assign a new detail view model to the detail view model property by using our detail view model creator, which is our iIndex object. And we need to pass in a key. We get that key over the event arguments that have the view model name. Now we just get rid of this comment. But now to make this iIndex working with the view model name, we need to register our view models with a name. So let's go to the Bootstrapper class. Here in the Bootstrapper class we register the type FriendDetailViewModel. Now I remove this as method call here and I use the generic keyed method. I want to key the FriendDetailViewModel as an iDetailViewModel. And the FriendDetailViewModel should be keyed under the name FriendDetailViewModel. Now I do exactly the same for the MeetingDetailViewModel. I also want to key this detail view model as an iDetailViewModel. And here I use the name MeetingDetailViewModel. That's it. Now our main view model will receive in the constructor for this iIndex the two names to create the specific iDetailViewModels. And when we scroll down again to the OpenDetailView method, now we have reduced this whole switch statement to just a single line to create the detail view model. Let's run the application and let's see if this works. I select a friend and the friend detail view comes up, so a friend detail view model has been created. Let's click on the meeting and you see the meeting detail view comes up because a meeting detail view model has been created. So everything works as expected and now we are using AutoFac's iIndex interface. Now let's continue with the creation of new meetings and with validating the start and end date. In the previous clips, you have implemented the logic in the Friend Organizer application so that the user can edit existing meetings. In this demonstration, you ensure that the user can also add new meetings to the Friend Organizer application. You will also learn how to synchronize the start and end date of a meeting by using the meeting wrapper. So let's start with adding new meetings and let's switch to Visual Studio. In the main Windows SAML file of the Friend Organizer UI project, we have already a menu item that is used to create a new friend. As you can see, the command property of this menu item is bound to the Create New Detail command property of the main view model. The command parameter property is set to the type FriendDetailViewModel. Let's take a look at the Create New Detail command property in the main view model. So I open up the main view model and I scroll down to the constructor. Here you can see how the Create New Detail command property is initialized with the new delegate command. The delegate command uses the method onCreateNewDetailExecute. I right click and I say go to definition. As you can see, this method takes the view model type and it calls the onOpenDetailView method of the main view model. It passes in new OpenDetailView event args and the view model name of these event args is set to the name of the specified view model type. So when I go back to the main Windows XAML file, you can see this new friend menu item. In this case, the specified view model type for the create new detail command is the friend detail view model. Now let's just copy this menu item and let's paste it below. I set the header of this new menu item to new meeting, and the view model type for this menu item should be the meeting detail view model. So that's it. Let's run the application and let's see if we can create new meetings. I click on the create menu item and here is our new meeting menu item. I click on it and the meeting detail view comes up. I set a title for my new meeting, Learn WPF, and I click the Save button. Now you can see the new meeting appears in the navigation. So I can navigate through my different meetings that I have specified. But there is one issue. When I create a new meeting, the validation for the required title property doesn't occur. Only if I type in a character and I remove it again, the validation occurs and it says the title field is required. So let's trigger this validation from the beginning in our meeting detail view model. I go to the view model folder and I open up the meeting detail view model. In this meeting detail view model, we have the initialize meeting method. At the end of this method, I just check if the ID property of our meeting is 0. If that's the case, we got a new meeting. Then I just set the title property of that meeting to an empty string. This will trigger the validation. So let's write here little trick to trigger the validation. Now let's run the application again and let's try to create a new meeting without a title. I click the create menu and new meeting. Now you see the title field is already red and it is required. The save button is also disabled. As soon as I start typing a character, the title field is no more red and the save button is enabled. When I remove the character again, the save button is disabled. So this validation works as expected. Now let's focus on the start and end date, because currently I can set the end date to a smaller value than the start date, but this makes no sense. So let's ensure that the end date is always greater than the start date or equal to the start date. On a meeting, you can set the end date to a smaller value than the start date. But hey, as you might have noticed, these dates are displayed in German on my machine here. This is because the date time picker is using the settings of your machine. So before we synchronize start and end date, let's change this to English on my machine. Here I've opened the control panel of my machine. I click on Clock, Language and Region. Then I click on Language to check which language I have specified. The language is English United States. But here you can see an option Change Date, Time or Number Formats. When I click on that option, you can see that I've specified the format German. Now I just changed this to Match Windows Display Language. And the display language is English United States as it is shown here. I click on Apply and OK. Now I close Control Panel and I restart the Friend Organizer application. I open up the meeting again and now you can see the dates are displayed in English. Now let's focus on the task that we wanted to do. When the end date is smaller than the start date, we want to trigger a validation. Or even better, we can dynamically adjust the start date. And this would be possible by using our meeting wrapper. So let's open up the meeting wrapper in the Friend Organizer UI project. When I scroll down, you can see the date from and date to properties here. In the setter of the date from property, I just check if the value of the date to property is smaller than the value of the date from property. If that's the case, we just set the end date to the value of the start date. Now I just copy this if statement and I scroll down to the date to property. So if the user changes the end date and so this corresponding date to property and the date to property is smaller than the date from property, then we just set the date from property to the value of the date to property. I press Ctrl+KD to format the code and I start the application. I open up the Learn WPF meeting and I try to specify a smaller end date than the start date. And as soon as I select something here, you can see that the start date is also adjusted if this end date is smaller. Same is true when I change the start date. When I make it smaller than the end date is not affected. But when I make it bigger than the end date the end date is automatically adjusted. So now we have ensured that the end date is always greater than or equal to the start date. So we are done with the basics of our meeting detail view. Let's wrap up what you have learned in this module. In this module, you have learned how to add another detail view for meetings to the Friend Organizer application. You have started by creating the meeting entity and you learned how to migrate and seed the database. Then you learned how to implement the meeting repository, the meeting wrapper, the meeting detail view model, and also the meeting detail view. You also learned how to extend the navigation in the Friend Organizer application so that it also displays meetings and not just friends. Beside all that, you also learned how to use AutoFact's iIndex interface to create detail view models by using a key. The meeting detail view is not completely done. So far we just display the title and the start and end date. But a meeting can also have many friends. So the next thing that we implement is the pick list that allows the user to add friends to a meeting or to remove friends from a meeting. Welcome to the module Picking M2N Related Details. My name is Thomas Claudius Huber. As you know from the previous module, the Friend Organizer application has a many-to-many relationship between meetings and friends. In this module, you learn how to build a pick list so that the user can select the friends that should belong to a meeting. Let me show you the module outline. You will learn in this module how to build the pick list in the meeting detail view, and then you will extend the meeting detail view model. You will add the required properties to the meeting detail view model, and you will load the friends for the pick list in the meeting detail view model, and you will also implement the logic to add and remove friends from a meeting. After you are done with this, the meeting detail view and the meeting detail view model are complete. But if a friend belongs to a meeting, the user should not be able to delete that friend by pressing the delete button on the friend detail view. So you will also learn how to block the deletion of friends who are part of a meeting. Now let's start with the pick list in the meeting detail view.